you've joined us to find out if AI is good for education. We have about 40 minutes to decide whether to shut it down, right? I'd love to start with a little game. I'm gonna ask you kind of who said it, when, about what. And this is the kind of room where you actually might know some of these quotes, but let's start. If men learn this, it will implant forgetfulness in their souls. They will cease to exercise memory because they will rely on that which is written, calling things to remembrance, no longer from within themselves, but by means of external marks. Socrates, as quoted by Plato in about 370 BC, he was criticizing the technology of the written word. Okay. Now, this will exhaust the children's brains and nervous systems with complex and multiple studies and ruin their bodies by protracted imprisonment. This was in a medical journal in 1883, and it was referring to the advancement of the school as we knew it. So, and the criticism was that school is a matter of just books and single classrooms. So not completely wrong, but just a little dramatic. Okay, one more. I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg. It's almost as if we're on the tip of something both exhilarating and terrifying. The actual context and state of content is going to be so different to anything we can envisage at this moment, where the interplay between user and the provider will be so simpatico, it's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about. That was David Bowie in 1999 talking about the internet and being asked, but it's just a delivery system. And he said, no, you have no idea what's coming. And so we'd like to unbury the punchline of is AI good for education and just name, like, of course it can be and it will be if we're intentional and thoughtful. And we listen to David Bowie. My name is Brooke Stafford-Brizard. I'm with the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. We brought you the advancement of the Carnegie Unit in 1906. Over 100 years ago, we offered you the credit hour and seat time. It's why your college degree was 120 credits. It's why we think about credits that accumulate toward math, literacy development, all of those things. And we don't think that's the best advancement anymore either, right? So as an organization committed to dismantling that unit and moving on to where we can actually transform our American schools, we need AI. And it's a critical piece of this puzzle. And so I'm thrilled to have this incredible panel of truly diverse perspectives today, where we're gonna dig into this question of not is AI good for education, but how can it be? So welcome. I'd love to start and get moving with a question for all of you just around not how you're approaching AI, but the missions and visions of your organizations they're focused on ensuring that students and teachers are in high quality, equitable learning environments. And what I'd love for you to do as a way of introduction is share a little bit about that vision and how AI is enhancing it. So Amanda, let's start with you.
Hi everybody, how we doing? We're good. Good morning. I'm Amanda Bickerstaff. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AI for Education. We're very unique because our mission is fully focused on how can we ensure that AI is actually good for education. We're really very middle of the ecosystem. I actually started AI for Education as a website on the Wednesday of ASU+GSV last year. So we're almost at 1 year of our prompt library and the work that we do. And we have an approach of thinking about this in two ways. One is that there's a need for this arrival technology to be supported from the bottom up and the top down. So we have a website with a prompt library of over 100 prompts. And if you search Google, we're the #1 prompt library of any kind which is wild to me. We have all kinds of free resources, and that's really been great. We've actually impacted people from all over the world. And then on the top down, we actually work with districts, schools, associations, and even companies and foundations around the adoption of generative AI specifically. And our mission is to ensure that, number one, is that this is an opportunity to make schools better for once. Like, really excited about that, everybody? Former teacher here, it's really important. We've actually made education and teaching much harder since even when I was a teacher 20 years ago. And that I think that that's part of it. But also, I think one of the things I'd like to talk about today is this idea that generative AI is not the end state, both for a school or a system, but also it's not the end state for the technology. So if anybody from Microsoft or Google or OpenAI in here, you're not trying to build better generative AI, you're trying to build superintelligence. So our ultimate goal is how do we help build the path and the support so that when superintelligence is here, we're not left behind.
Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to spend, it's actually nice and peaceful in here compared to being out in the hall. My name is Sandra Huang, yes. I am from Zuckerberg and lead the education work there. Brooke and I have spent some time there together. Our work at CZI has been really focused on how do you really unlock student potential and student learning, and how do we think about that in a really holistic way, right? Because students aren't just a math or reading brain, but we're really trying to equip young people to really be fruitful, contributing members of society, have the agency in their own lives. So that's something we've been thinking about and working on for a long time. And we are also part of our philanthropy is operating and building products. And so a big part of what we've been working on over the last many years is how do you think about the role of technology to bring forward evidence and research practices and make it really practical and tangible for teachers to be able to do day in and day out. And we also think about, again, that holistic student experience and how to really think about equipping students well and thinking about equipping students equitably. And so when we think about AI and what that offers to us, I really think there's at least, it's the opportunity to really embed what we know and some of our values around teaching and learning into the fundamental technologies. Right, and so that includes, number one, like how do you bring more evidence into the fundamental building blocks of AI and the research and the learning science? How do you think about children more holistically, right? In addition to like moving forward in a curriculum, how do you think about the skills and the purpose around the student? And finally, how do we think about more equitable really access and really the fundamentals, like how can the tool make sure that our own human biases aren't limiting us in terms of what we see as the opportunities for different types of learners and students.
That's great. Good morning. My name is Simon Allen. I'm the CEO of McGraw-Hill, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for including me on this esteemed panel. It's nice to be the only gentleman here representing the group. If we may start sort of top down a little bit for a minute and think about how I talk about McGraw-Hill and our mission as we travel the world and talk to different ministries and different governments about what we do as a corporation. And what I tell them is that we believe that our core mission is really to enrich society. And that sounds very noble and very grand, but if you think about the importance of education at any level, and our company is pre-K all the way through lifelong learning. And if you think about any level of education within governments, particularly so many new governments this year around the world that are being elected, they take that message very seriously and our mission very seriously, that as a global education company, we are here to help you enrich your population. Because as you think about the value of education, there is nothing more important to society in what you do. So that's the topic. We also talk a lot about creating unique pathways for students if we come down from that grandiose mission, if you like, and then we think more tactically about what we do. We look for unique pathways that we can inspire students to utilize as they navigate their learning journey. Relevant to today, perhaps, we think about what can we do to make students more engaged in what they're learning. I've had the privilege and the pleasure of being in this industry for 38 years. And if I go back to when I began as a sales rep for a college publisher in Dallas, Texas in 1986, before many of you were born, actually, the message I used to get from all of my customers at that time was, we need to engage our students better. That message has not changed. Fast forward, here we are today. Still today, what I hear when I'm out very often with our sales teams and we have various meetings, I get the chance to talk to our customers. We hear all the time, the biggest concern we have is that our students are not engaged. How do I motivate this group of students? This year, more than any, I had the pleasure of being at Cal State Fullerton a few months ago, and I won't name the individual or the department, but I will say that one of the faculty there said to me, we have never seen a more poorly prepared group of students coming into our freshman year. Now, that's worth pausing on, because that means that we are not doing what we should be doing to benefit and enrich society. If students are not ready to come into the higher education level and progress, it's an issue. A big issue that we have to resolve. How do we do that? One of the ways we do that, and this comes down to the relevant topic for today, and we have been working at McGraw-Hill for over 2 decades, actually, over 20 years, with AI products. We know and we believe very strongly that the best way to engage a student at any age is to make their learning more personal. If you make their learning more personal and directly relevant to them, they will learn more, they'll digest more, they'll retain more, they will enjoy their education process more, and they will continue to go down the education path. With one of our, without talking much about our own products, but we do have one that's notable and relevant here with Alex that has taught students how to succeed in math and chemistry for over 2 decades. What it does in a personalized way is direct a student so they can be confident about what they're studying. It also helps from a point of view of accessibility and the opportunity to democratize the delivery of education in many ways, because you can utilize Alex privately by yourself. You can use it through the teacher, through your classroom, any number of ways, and it gives you the chance at your own pace to develop the skills that you must have in order to progress. That's using AI. Now here we are today with generative AI. Let's think more about what we can do to extend that skill and knowledge in ways that are more meaningful to students, perhaps now beyond STEM. A lot of the focus with AI has been around STEM subjects. Now we're looking more at reading and writing. We can do an awful lot more in ways, again, to help students develop and learn their skills. Our goal is to make sure we keep students engaged. We help the teaching community. That's a critical point we'll talk about later, I'm sure. We must help the teaching community understand how to use these tools. It's no good as having them, investing the gazillions that we do to have these tools without making sure they are useful and usable and they have efficacy in every aspect that we deliver.
Thank you. Let's hear from Karen.
Thank you. So did not realize you were going to start with Socrates this morning, but grateful for that. I'm actually the odd one out in the sense that I work with educators and institutions, sort of traditionally associated with education, but really am a consultant around how organizations of all kinds can bring these technologies into their existing workflows, adapt their workflows, and do the really proper sort of responsible governance of them while they're innovating, right? I think there's a lot of conversation out in the world about how governance or regulation and innovation are in opposition to one another, and I really deeply challenge that, that framing. And so when I think about education in my day-to-day life, it's really about, we're all students, right? And what I'm finding, particularly when I'm working with institutions, whether it's K-12 or higher ed, the professional development piece, is as interesting and as fraught and as exciting as the learning part. And to me, that's a really interesting opportunity for us to step back and to not just rethink what we're doing, but how we're doing it, how to deal with traditional silos that we've been building up, and sort of the sort of ascendance of specialization, which is still a very important feature, but how we then start to connect these areas of specialization and expertise in ways that can be translated for broader audiences and really utilized in ways that were really hypothetical up to this point. So it's a very exciting time for entire communities, and our work is really focused on how we get those communities to unlock what they have, what they need, and then where they're going to need to really supplement their capabilities and resources and prioritize some of that work, which is not always obvious, and it's not one size fits all. So glad to be part of the conversation here, and thank you for including me.
Well, thanks for being here. Let's build on that, Karen, and I think all of you kind of spoke to the importance of agency of these users, right? And so, LLMs are made of people, right? And so I'm curious, like, how are you thinking about, and it's not just, all of us are thinking about students and educators. Sandra, you're thinking about researchers and the role that they're playing, Simon, authors. How are you thinking about involving and kind of creating agency for these individuals and these stakeholders to be the ones driving this forward, not just the users?
Sure, I could start. I think that one of the things that we think is really important is this opportunity to build AI literacy, so that we can have those conversations and have agency. I think that there's super misconceptions. We see them all the time, and they're paramount about what generative AI is and isn't, and even what artificial intelligence is and isn't. One of the things I've recognized is that we kind of moved away from the term artificial intelligence, and it was called machine learning. We were like, it's not really, there's no intelligence, right? And that's what we were doing in the last 5 years. Like, so in fact, there are schools and systems out there that have AI systems, potentially in McGraw Hill and other places, that have no idea. And then are now suddenly going like, oh my gosh, you mean that our iReady and our assessment systems have AI in them? And they're getting lumped into this section of like fear and uncertainty that's happening within our schools and districts about this new technology, and the fear that students will actually not have agency but have it taken away. And so I think that this is something that we really believe very strongly, that the first part we need to do is just come together and understand what this is and isn't. There's no intelligence in artificial intelligence right now. These things are not thinking. These are things, they are really great at modeling and like feeling real sometimes, right? But they're also designed to feel real. They're designed to say, never say I don't know, even when they don't know. They're designed to have thank you and I'm sorry and all those things. And that's creating a space in which I think there is a lack of real ability to have good conversations about what this is going to mean. The second, so we have AI Literacy Day that's coming up this Friday. Mark your calendars, everybody. I know no one will be tired. You'll all be good. But Friday is the first ever AI Literacy Day that's supported by a steering committee. We're a part of it. It's really an amazing opportunity. So that's one. I think the second thing is just, who in here is a leader in a school or an educator? Got a couple. Have you talked to students about this moment in time? Are they not the best conversations that you have? If you have not, please do. If you're a builder, an operator, even a funder, a foundation, if you are not talking to students, then you are missing out. The older you are, the least this technology will impact you. That's just what it is. I'm sorry. It's no offense to anyone old, including myself. I'm also old. A 15-year-old looks at me and they're like, "You're ancient, miss." And you're like, yeah, I am. And it's really not going to impact me as much as going to impact our 17-year-olds, our 16-year-olds. But what about our 5-year-olds that are going into a world where they're going to graduate high school, if high school still exists in the way it does today, in 2036? And I think that that's when we really talk about agency, is we need to have better conversations with the people this is really going to impact.
And let me build on that and say yes, and, how are we involving students with full agency? And this system was built over a century ago before we understood so much of the science of human learning and development. And so, Sandra, I want to hear from you about how do we think about connecting student agency with the wisdom of researchers and educators who have really unlocked what does work in classrooms?
Yeah, I think, we think a lot about sort of the system itself, and sort of, I think one thing to think about is like, what are all the assets in the room, right? The adults and the different stakeholders at the table inside the school building and those around, right? I think, being at this conference, you see the experts that are on the learning science and the research and the human development side, the families that know their students well and the students themselves. And so I think, in this moment with AI, I don't know, this is probably the center of like the buzziness, right? Like just being in the space with 5,000 people all asking this sort of similar questions. We're all figuring it out. And I think there are different time horizons of this. Right now we're in a moment where we're some of the basics, and it's really important for different organizations to really help us with that AI literacy, because AI itself with the natural language interface is democratizing computation by itself, right? Like all of us, teachers, students, families, can play with it. And we can see a lot of the startups coming up to really make that easier and better. Those are like in the immediate. What are like the really clear use cases, productivity and other things that we can help teachers and students with those things. But what I'm really interested in is like the next time horizon or the one after that, which really is the opportunity for researchers to come in, because if you're doing academic research, it's not gonna like immediately hit a classroom tomorrow, but what are the fundamentals that ensure we are learning about learning? We're learning about equitable access. We're thinking about the ways that data we can actually like think about learning and the research of learning in a computational way. Like we don't really do that today. We don't really instrument for that as much as we could to really make sure that AI as a technology on that midterm and longer term time horizon is a really powerful in the fundamentals of the technology, so that all the people that are building on it or developing on it can really have more power. And I'm really excited about just the ways that different stakeholders are activating today. We fund, for example, Anaheim Union as a high school that they're partnered with UC Irvine. So we have this research and this district partnership with the families and the students and the teachers on the ground to really make sure we're anchored on what are the district's near-term priorities? How do we study it, again, in the research side? And then I'm hoping that comes back into the technology side so it can be shared via technology and really scaled and available to more communities.
Yeah, thank you. As we think about kind of moving forward, it's moving, the field is moving so fast. Simon, Alex has been around a while too. So how, as a global company, how do you think about iteration and pivoting when you're seeing something that's working really well or not working?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you're right. Alex has been around a while. Obviously, what we do with all of our products, many of, not just that utilize AI, on that journey to personalize the learning process. How we think about pivoting is based around exclusively what we recognize our customer base finds useful. That's important because there are a lot of elements with AI, Gen AI, increasingly now, where there is a level of anxiety that you will see from teachers, from the teaching community. And we have to make sure collectively that we demystify the opportunities of teaching with this kind of technological tool that's evolving. And the beauty of teaching and our industry is that there are different evolutions as you go all the way back to the book, as you said, in the original schools. The evolution of our industry is happening all the time, and we have to embrace that. There's no, the question, is it good for, of course it's good for education. It's many things are good for education. It's how you utilize the material that you're able to use. And it was a great question about how many individuals here are dealing with the teaching community directly, and have you asked those questions? Because we need to reduce the fear factor. We need to embrace the opportunity that's there and do it in a way that is meaningful to all of our customers. So we think very heavily about usage. There was something you mentioned as well, that when I think about the data that we all have as across our different companies, and we're a fairly large company, so we have trillions of bits of data. We have actually billions of data that we look at every year from all of our 24 million plus user student base. And I would say that when you look at the opportunity of maximizing the value of the data when you're looking at a predictive process. And let's keep it simple. What we're looking at with AI, Gen AI, is primarily a predictive process to allow you to understand better and to allow the technology to make you understand where you've gone wrong and how it can help you get better. It's there to personalize your success as well as your journey. If you have trillions of bits of data, you can use that data in very powerful ways. I do think that the companies that will succeed, and therefore the teachers and the community that will succeed, will be those companies that frankly have scale. Because the larger you are in this kind of community and in this kind of technological advancement, the more opportunity you have to find the best possible products to help those students learn. And you do it in a way that you minimize the stresses and the anxiety that students and particularly their teachers face. And if you do that, you give the teaching community more time to do what they enjoy doing, and that critical human interaction, and you take off some of the more administrative tasks away from them, and it gives them much more opportunity to succeed in what they're doing.
Simon, that's a fantastic segue into kind of, I want to talk about how we think about a different use of time in our classrooms and schools, and stay in kind of an optimistic space of like, we don't want this tool and these tools just to do what we do now faster and better. Like, we want something very different. And so Karen, I think you have really wonderful insights around kind of what AI will help us to spend more time doing, and kind of what are the implications for that in terms of how we push ourselves as a society to spend our time.
Yeah, and that's a very big question. I think so a lot of the anxiety around these technologies is not really around the technology at all. It's around how it's going to impact us either personally or our families or our careers, or just sort of the future that we've been able to anticipate up to now. Because the one thing everybody says is like 5 years from now it's all going to be different, but nobody can tell you how, right? And that's anxiety producing, and it is for everybody. Really interesting other knock-on effects of that, which is people make more mistakes when they're anxious and nervous and not paying attention, right? So as a manager in a system of any kind, really tending to the people in your system and giving them a chance to sort of express and unpack where that jitteriness is coming from. It's not usually the technology. It's usually something about how that technology is impacting their environment. That won't always be true. We will absolutely be freaked out by the technology itself, but for the most part, it's around that impact moment. And so when we're sold these technologies in a way that they're going to make us more efficient and more productive, and they're going to reduce redundancy and roteness and that kind of thing. Some of them will, some of the time, right? And I think some of the highest and the easiest use cases, you'll see the first ones out there really at scale are the ones that are automating well-worn, well-understood process. So high throughput, we know what good looks like, we can automate it fairly well when we know when the automation is working, and we can kind of tell when the automation is not, because we do it a lot and we've got good standards for success. These tools are also good, particularly in the generative AI side, at triggering new thoughts and sort of creativity in some categories. But that's where we don't know what good looks like, and we have to start exercising really much deeper, higher, more collaborative interrogations of what good looks like, right? What do we want this output to look like? What are our intentions with the process? In our work, we very much distinguish between outputs, which are sort of what models produce, and that first draft that ChatGPT tosses up at you when you ask, and an outcome, which is what your final, what do you want it to do, right? And how much distance and air do we want to put between model outputs and outcomes? And that's a lot of cognitive work, right? So for all the efficiencies we're going to gain through this automation process, we're actually going to be spending a lot more time thinking about the questions we're asking, thinking about how to evaluate a range of, like, good answers are going to be cheap and easy, right? Telling them apart from another is going to be really hard, and it's going to be a team sport. And when you think about how at least in a corporate setting, most meetings are run, it is not to do the collaborative work of interrogating 7 good answers, right? It's to report on your 7 good answers. And so we're gonna have to change the way we run meetings. What's interesting is when I think about traditional classrooms, they're actually set up better for this, right? Where you can learn how to learn. We go back to Socrates. I will keep bringing Socrates up. But learning how to learn, theory of knowledge, critical thinking, these are all the things we're going to need to make time for. We're going to have to elevate curiosity. We're going to have to elevate humility. We're going to have to elevate the ability to ask a good question as opposed to just show up with a smart-sounding answer. Like I said, that's going to be cheap and easy. And these are activities that take time that we are not today making a lot of space for outside certain educational settings. So I think if we can preserve that opportunity to really do the investigation, to learn how to have conversations that are respectful and challenging and collectively improve outcomes, we're going to do much better as this generation also matures into the workforce, because that's really what the workforce is going to ultimately be about. So I know it's kind of thematic, but
it's wonderful. I want to hear from all of you in terms of leadership, whether it's teaching as leadership or leading a company or leading an organization or just managing people. Like, what do you think the most important qualities we should be focusing on are in terms of the leaders that are going to create the most impactful environments around that vision? Karen, let's start with you.
It's a really good question, because we're talking about leading through a period of uncertainty that's going to be prolonged, right? That it's never going to be less complicated than it is today. It's probably not going to move very much slower than it's moving today. So we've got to brace ourselves for more complexity, more uncertainty, more dynamism and speed. Those are different kinds of leaders than we have traditionally raised and rewarded, right? So I think I would say curiosity, humility, discretion is going to be a really important one. The ability to convene and collaborate is going to be one. And the ability to seek resources and perspectives from outside your traditional organizations or lanes is going to be very important. We can talk about other attributes, but I think that mindset is probably the most important starting place from my perspective.
Thank you. Yeah. Sandra, I'm going to get out of our linear fashion here. Sandra, yes. What do you think when you think about leadership? And I know you work with many, like you are a leader, you work with system leaders, like, what resonates in terms of what Karen's sharing, and what would you add?
Yeah, I think what really resonates is almost the need to be learners, and that may be the most fundamental thing in a moment. And we've lived through the cell phone or the internet, or some of us have, and sort of the initial buzz and the exploration. It's quite exciting, but then you need to think through what all of the implications are on your local scope of influence, whether it's like your organization. And so I think this like overall mindset of learning is one I think it's just really important as adults. Like we work in education, so we think about learning, but sometimes we are not learners for ourselves. And sort of having that flexibility and asking the hard questions is one. I think rigor is going to be interesting in this age where we are going to be assisted, all of us, right? Whether it's in our HR, in our people operations, or in our core strategies, that we're going to be augmented and assisted by AI, even as we figure out how to leverage AI for students and teaching outcomes. And so how do we think about where we can be rigorous about what is good and not be lazy because the AI is assisting us, but what does that look like, and how do we figure that out in our internal processes? And then I think the other thing I would leave with is just around collaboration again, and Karen, you mentioned this, but I think from my perspective, in the seat that I have the privilege of sitting in, we get to work across sectors a lot. And I really believe in cross-sector collaboration, but it is also incredibly hard. right? When you're talking about a for-profit company or a startup or big tech or academic researchers or school leaders or educators or families or students. That's a lot of people with a lot of different opinions and different ways of knowing. But I really think we know a lot about educating students well. We do. And we know a lot about each student. Some set of adults, hopefully, in many cases, like we do know quite a lot. And it's about how do we have the will to connect those things, think about how AI can unlock and enable that in just new ways. Problems that were hard to solve will be easier to solve. So like, how do you rethink the questions and work across sectors and collaborate in a way where we can just take this moment of opportunity that the technology is enabling for us to really think about the learning outcomes and the teaching outcomes that we really want to see for our students.
And Amanda, you've engaged over 70,000 teachers. So when you think about kind of these dispositions, these competencies around collaboration, curiosity, tolerating ambiguity, right, and just kind of being able to kind of lean into that discomfort, do those resonate, and are there others when you think about the teachers that you're engaging who are most well-suited and set up to kind of lead into the future that you're naming?
Well, that's great. And we talk about three things. It comes to just using generative AI that really makes you successful right now. One is creativity. Just being creative. Like, what if you wanted to do something in your classroom and you didn't have time, you can do that now. But what does it mean to take 10 steps past that? It doesn't mean using generative AI for better, more worksheets. If you do, I'll be very upset and I'll come to your homes. Like, this is not what we want. Like, we want to go past that. So what we tell people, we actually show people is, if you get all this time back, like, what does it actually mean that you could do that you've always wanted to do? And then things that are just crazy. So creativity, I think, is really important. We see that happen a lot. The second is resilience. Who remembers the iPhone when it first came out, or the Apple Maps put me in the Hudson River? Like, these technologies don't work very well at first. And a lot of times people will say, this doesn't work, it's it, not me. And it's actually, no, it's you. These technologies, like, you have to have resilience. And then the third thing is just a bit of understanding that, like, you're now a computer scientist. You're using natural language to actually use technology and create in ways. And so if you understand that it makes a difference how you approach and ask questions and interact, what you get is people that start to see a path to the future that is unique and interesting and engaging. And we see that happen whether it's a leader or a student. What's being done in schools right now is this work is being led by early adopters and innovators. And that doesn't mean that they could be a special educator, an ELA teacher that's like fearful of their students not learning anymore, whatever that is. But if they hold those three traits, we really see that's something that is going to get them a foot forward, and students as well. But we also see it's really not that hard to get everyone there. And one of the things that's so remarkable is you talk about the work that we've done. I've never had a hard room. And people are like, oh, you might have hard people. I've never had hard people at the end. And if you treat them with respect and show them what's possible, it is unbelievable what these teachers and leaders can do.
And I love that you name resilience, and kind of one of the biggest mistakes we make when we think about resilience is that it's just within the individual, when the research shows us that resilience is developed in community, in context, with each other, and that is the path I hear we should be taking forward. Simon, you named that those who have scale will be the most influential. You've got quite a bit of that, and I'm curious, like, how has this latest year in kind of Gen AI, how has that pushed you as a leader, and where have you found you needed to focus?
Thank you, and we can always do with more scale, but yes, we're proud of who we are over 135 years. I think the first thing to say that when you go back, say, 18 months ago, when all of the palaver around ChatGPT first came out, there was a lot of hysteria. And I think for any leader, it's never beneficial to respond to hysteria. And you need to think very calmly and carefully about what is in front of you. And you analyze what you believe could be beneficial. You get excited. There's no shame, no problems with getting excited about the opportunity, because very clearly you can start to recognize, wow, this could mean X, Y, Z. This could mean any number of different things for us. You talked about our authors. We can engage authors in ways to make sure that we're generating material that they know will create the best outcomes. And we can do it through using our platforms and technology and evolving that technology. It's very exciting, but you don't get carried away, you certainly don't panic, and you don't suffer from hysteria. So you think about who is best placed in the organization to make sure that you can really glean the value and the usability of the technology that's there. And what we did was set up a small committee of extremely intelligent people that obviously led by technologists who recognize, and also our product teams, who recognize what is an efficacious model that students will benefit and teachers will be able to manage and enjoy and embrace. And unless you do those things, you'll be trying so many different opportunities. It can be a distraction and it can be a noise. What you have to do is make very sure that you are focusing on opportunities, in our case, across the entire company. Scale does benefit because we can go pre-K through life. What can we create as a technology that will benefit that entire community? That's been our focus, and we're very proud of that. And I think with a lot of companies, McGraw Hill included, you will see some real insightful development coming ahead that will benefit and massively improve education provision. It's a really exciting time for us, and I'm conscious of the time. I'm so sorry.
So we're going to wrap up just with what I'd love for everyone in this room to hear, and keep it 5-10 seconds. Milestones are barreling toward us, right? Like the future is tomorrow. It's an hour from now. What do you want people in this room thinking about as they leave in 10 seconds each? Amanda.
I think it's just a really important time that we work together. I love that scale matters, but so does the person in this room that has the greatest innovative idea that actually looks at how does this transform teaching and learning. No better worksheets, everybody. Like, what does that mean? And we have to be able to work together like this group is doing right now.
I think go explore and learn in the short term, and then I think for those of us with the ability to influence that midterm, to make sure that we're really thinking about the fundamentals and stay rigorous about that, like who is in the data, what communities are represented, what learners, what long-tail learning differences, and what are those like step function opportunities to unlock student potential that are possible. So, yeah.
Think as big as you can think, and imagine the opportunities, and then think very small and imagine the execution. If you cannot execute on what you've imagined, then it's not worth your time and you've wasted your time and money. But really think carefully about what is possible, because there are so many things that are very, very exciting, but you have to be able to deliver on the possibilities for the value of the education community.
Karen, bring us home.
Okay, everything that they just said, but I'm going to round it out. Keep asking really good questions. And if something doesn't feel right, sound right, smell right, stop, right? And ask more questions, get more perspectives. Like, you have to also be prepared to see the opportunities, but be prepared to stop and just look around. And I'm not saying stop forever, but just don't assume. So that would be my last little bit.
Please join me in thanking this incredible group of leaders. Thanks so much.